Hello, everyone. I am back. But it is not the morning, unfortunately. It is 3:01 p.m. I had the craziest morning today, so I didn't really have time to read. But I had a shower and I changed into my PJs because I am not going out. I am staying in. So, yeah, we're just gonna continue off from where we are. We are starting off chapter 11 of The Body. Oh my god, what is this? Here we go. Wait, maybe I should get comfy for this. Cause I'm gonna be sitting down. I'm on my bed, if you can't tell. So I need to find ways to not make my back ache. Because we're not doing that. Okay. I feel like this is fine. Right? No. No, no, no. Okay, we're just gonna do this. Hopefully this will work. Oh, I'm not comfy. Wait. You know what? We're just gonna do this. We're gonna do this. It's gonna be great. Okay. We got to the dump. Already off to a rocky start. Here we go. We got to the dump around 1:30, and Vern led the way down the embankment with a paratroops over the side. We went to the bottom in big jumps and leaped over the brackish trickle of water oozing listly out the culvert which poked out the cinders. Beyond this small boggy area was the sandy trash litter verge of the dump. There was a 6-foot security fence surrounding it. Even 20 feet weather faded signs were posted. They said, Castle Rock Dump, hours 4 to 8 p.m., closed Mondays, trespassing strictly forbidden. We climbed to the top of the fence, swung over, and jumped down. Teddy and Vern led the way toward the well, which you tapped with an old-fashioned pump, the kind from which you had to call the water with elbow grease. There was a Crisco can filled with water next to the pump handle, and the great sin was to forget to leave it filled for the next guy to come along. The iron handle stuck off at an angle, looking a one-winged bird that was trying to fly. It had once been green, but almost all of the paint had been rubbed off by the thousands of hands that had worked that handle since 1940. The dump is one of the strongest memories of Castle Rock. It always reminds me of this surrealist painters when I think of it. And those fellows were always painting pictures of clock faces lying limply in the crotches um, of trees, or Victorian living rooms standing in the middle of the Sahara or steam engines coming out of the fireplaces. To my child's eyes, nothing in the Castle Rock dump looked as if it really belonged there. We had entered from the back. If you came from the front, a wide dirt road came in through the gate, broadened out into a semicircular area that had been bulldozed as flat as dirt landing strip, and then ended abruptly at the edge of the dumping pit. The pump, Teddy and Vern were currently standing there and squabbling about who was going to prime it, was at the back of the great pit. It was maybe 80 feet deep and filled with all the American things that get empty. It was maybe 80 feet deep and filled with all the American things that get empty, wear out, or just don't work anymore. There were many stuff that my eyes hurt just looking at it. Or maybe it was your brain that actually hurt because it could never quite decide what your eyes should stop on. Then your eye would stop or be stopped by something that seemed as out of place, or those limp clock faces, or the living room in the desert. A brass bed a brass bedstead leaning drunkenly in the sun. A little boy's a little girl's dolly looked amazingly between her thighs as she gave birth to stuffing. An overturned Studebaker automobile went its chrome bullet nose glittering in the sun like some Buck Rogers missile. One of those giant water bottles they had in office buildings transformed by the summer into a hot blazing sapphire. What am I even reading right now, Stephen King? Stephen King, like you're literally just saying a bunch of mumbo jumbo that don't even make sense, bro. What? There was plenty of wildlife there too, although it wasn't the kind you see in Walt Disney nature films or at those tame zoos where you can pet the animals. Plump rats, woodchucks, grow sleek and lumbered on such rich chow or rotting hamburger and maggoty vegetables, seagulls by the thousands and stalking among the gulls like thoughtful, introspective ministers, and occasional huge crow. What? Okay, whatever that means. It was also the place where the town's stray dogs came for a meal when they couldn't find any trash cans to knock over or any deer to run. They were miserable, ugly tempered, mongrel lot, slat sided and grinning bitterly. They would attack each other over a fly blown piece of bologna or a pile of chicken guts fuming in the sun. But these dogs never attacked Milo Pressman, the dump keeper, because Milo was never without Chopper at his heel. Chopper was, at least until Joe Camber's dog, Kuyo, went rabid 20 years later, the most feared and least seen dog in Castle Rock. He was the meanest dog for 40 miles around, or so we heard, and ugly enough to stop striking a clock. The kids whispered legends about Chopper's meanness. Some said he was half German Shepherd. Some said he was mostly boxer and a kid from Castleview with the unfortunate name of Har Harry Horror. Ugh. Horror claimed that Chopper was a Doberman pinscher. What is that, bro? Whose vocal cords had been surgically removed so that you couldn't hear him when he was on the attack. There were other kids who claimed Chopper was a maniacal maniacal Irish wolfhound, and Milo Pressman fed him a special mixture of Gaines meals and chicken blood. These same kids claimed that Milo didn't dare take Chopper out of his shack unless the dog was hooded like a hunting falcon. The most common story was that Pressman had trained Chopper not just to psych, no, sick, but to sick specific parts of the human anatomy. Thus, an unfortunate kid who had illegally scaled the dump fence to pick up illicit treasures might hear Milo Pressman cry, "Chopper, sick hand!" And Chopper would grab that hand, hold on, ripping skin and tendons, powdering bones between his slavering jaws until Milo told him to quit. It was rumored that Chopper could take an ear, an eye, a foot, or a leg, and that a second offender who was surprised by Milo and ever loyal Chopper could hear the dread cry, "Chopper, slick balls!" And that kid would be a soprano for the rest of his life. And that kid would be a soprano for the rest of his life. What does that mean, bro? Milo himself was more commonly seen and thus more commonly regarded. He was just a half bright working Joe who supplemented his small town salary by fixing things people drew away and selling them around town. There was no sign of either Milo or Chopper today. Chris and I watched Vern prime the pump while Teddy worked the handle frantically. At last he was rewarded with a flood of clear water. A moment later both of them had their heads under the throw, Teddy still pumping a mile away. Teddy's crazy, I said softly. Oh yeah, Chris said matter-of-factly. He won't live to be twice the age he is now, I bet. His dad burning his ears like that, that's what did it. He's crazy to dodge trucks the way he does. He can't see worth of crap glasses or no glasses. You remember that time in the tree? Yeah. The year before, Teddy and Chris had been climbing the big pine tree behind my house. They were also at to the top, and Chris said they couldn't go any further because all of the branches up there were rotten. Teddy got that crazy stubborn look on his face and said, "Frick that." He had pine tar all over his hands, and he was gonna go until he couldn't touch the top. Nothing Chris said could talk him out of it. So up he went, and he actually made it. He only weighed 75 pounds or so, remember. He stood there clutching the roof of the pine in one tar gummy hand, shouting that he was the king of the world or some stupid thing like that. And then there was a sickening rotted crack of the branch he was standing on gave away and he plummeted. What happened next was one of those things one of those things that made you sure there must be a god. Chris reached out purely on reflex, and what he caught was a fistful of Teddy's Duchamp's hair. Ooh. And although his wrist fat swelled up fat, and he was unable to use his right hand very well for almost 2 weeks. Chris held him until Teddy screamed, and Chris held whoa. Chris held him until Teddy, screaming and cursing, got his foot on a live branch thick enough to support his weight. Except for Chris's blind grab, he would have turned and crashed and smashed all the way to the foot of the tree, 120 feet below. Then they got down. Chris was gray faced and almost puking with the fear reaction. And Teddy wanted to fight him for pulling his hair. They have gone at it too, if they had been there to make peace. I dream about that every now and then, Chris said, and looked at me with a strangely defenseless eyes. Except in this dream I have, I always miss him. I just get a couple of hairs and Teddy screams and down he goes. Weird, huh? Weird. I agreed, and for just one moment he looked in each other's eyes and saw some of the true things that made us friends. Then we looked away again and watched Teddy and Vern throw water at each other, screaming and laughing and calling each other pussies. Yeah, but you didn't miss him, I said. Chris Chambers never misses, am I right? Not even when the ladies leave the seat down, he said, and he winked at me and formed an O with his thumb and forefinger and spat a near bullet through it. Eat me raw, Chambers, I said. Through a flavor straw, he said, and we grinned at each other. These guys, bro. Vern yelled, "Come on and get your water before it runs back down the pipe. Race you," Chris said. "In this heat? You're off your gourd." "Come on," he said, still grinning. "On my go, okay?" Go! We raced, our sneakers digging up the hard, sun-baked dirt, our torso leaning out ahead of our flying blue jean legs. Our fists doubled. It was a dead heat with both Vern and Chris's side, and Teddy on mine holding up his middle fingers as at the same moment. We collapsed laughing in still, smoky odor of the place. Chris tossed Vern his canteen when it was full. Chris and I went to the pump, and first Chris pumped for me, and I pumped for him. The shocking cold water sluicing off the suit. The salt? The suit? The soot? The soot? Oh, and the heat all in a flash, sending our suddenly freezing scalps 4 months ahead into January. Then I refilled the lard can, and we all walked over to sit down in the shade. The dump's only tree, a stunted ash 40 feet from Milo Pressman's Pressman's uh, tarper shack. The tree was hunched slightly to the west, as if what it really wanted to do was pick up its roots the way an old lady would pick up his skirts and just get the hell out of the dump. The most, Chris said, laughing, tossing his tangled hair back from his brow. A blast, I said, nodding, still laughing myself. This is really a good time, Bird said simply, and he didn't just mean by off limits inside the dump, or fudging our folks, or going on a hike up the railroad tracks into Harlow. He meant those things, but it seems to me now that there was more, and that we all knew it. Everything was there and around us. We knew exactly who we were and exactly where we were going. It was grand. Bro, I love that line right there, just saying. We sat under the tree for a while, shooting this stuff like we always did. We had the best ball time, still Yankees, with Mantley and Maris, of course. What was the best car? 55 Thunderbird with Teddy holding out stubbornly for the 58 Corvette. Who was the toughest guy in Castle Rock who wasn't in our gang? We all agreed it was Jamie Gallant, who gave Mrs. Ewing the finger and then sauntered out of her class with his hands in his pockets while she shouted at him, "The best." TV show. Either The Untouchables or Peter Gunn, both Robert Stack as Elliot Ness and Craig Stevens as Gunn were cool. All that stuff. It was Teddy who first noticed that the shade of the ash tree was getting longer and asked me what time it was. I looked at my watch and surprised to see it was 2:15. "Hey man," Vern said, "somebody's got to go for prov what? Provisions for provisions. Dump opens at 4. I don't want to still be here when Milo and Chopper makes the scene." Even Teddy agreed. He was afraid of Milo, who had a pot belly and was at least 40, but every kid in Castle Rock squeezed his balls between his legs when Chopper's name was mentioned. "Okay," I said. "Odd man goes." "That's you, Gordy," Chris said, smiling. "Odd as cod." "So's your mother." "Oh, so's your mother," I said, and gave them each a coin. Flip. 4 coins glittered into the sun. 4 hands snatched them from the air. 4 flat smacks on 4 grimy wrists. We uncovered 2 heads and 2 tails. We flipped again, and this time all 4 of us had tails. "Oh, Jesus, that's a goocher," Vern said, not telling us anything we didn't know. 4 heads or a moon was supposed to be extraordinary good luck. 4 tails was a goocher, and that meant very bad luck. "Screw that," Chris said. "It doesn't mean anything. Go again." "No, man," Vern said earnestly. "A goocher, that's really bad. You remember when Clint Backen and those guys got whipped out on Ciro's Hill and Durham? Billy told me they were flipping for beers, and they came up a goocher just before they got into the car, and bang, they all get totaled." "I don't like that, sincerely. Nobody believes that crap about moons and goochers," Teddy said impatiently. "It's baby stuff, Vern. You gonna flip or not?" Vern flipped, but with obvious reluctance. This time, he, Chris, and Teddy all had tails. I was showing Thomas Jefferson on a nickel, and I was suddenly scared. It was as if a shadow had crossed some inner sun. They still had a goocher, the 3 of them, as if dumb fate had pointed at them a second time. Abruptly, I thought of Chris saying, I just get a couple of hairs and Teddy screams and down he goes. Weird, huh? Three tails, one head. Then Teddy was laughing like crazy, cackling, laughing, and pointing at me, and the feeling was gone. I heard that only fairies laugh like that, I said, and gave him the finger. Hee hee, Gordy. Teddy laughing. Go get the go get the provisions, you frickin' morphidit, whatever that means, morphidit. I wasn't really sorry to be going. I was rested up and didn't mind going down the road to the Florida market. Don't call me any of your mother's pet names, I said to Teddy. Hee hee hee. What a frickin' wet you are, LeChance. Go on, Gordy, Chris said. We'll wait over by the tracks. You guys better not go without me, I said. Vern laughed. Going without you, going without you'd be like going with Slits instead of Budweiser's, Gordy. Shut up. They chanted together. I don't shut up, I grow up, and when I look at you, I throw up. Man, that's like the my most favorite line of the movie, and I'm really glad that I read that in the book actually. Oh my god. Then your mother's gonna go around the corner and he licks it up, I said, and hauled ass out of there, giving them the finger over my shoulders as I went. I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12. Jesus, did you? Ooh, crazy line, bro. Okay, we're starting a new chapter, but I have 9 minutes left, so let's see. I think I could do this one in 9 minutes too. Yeah, I can do this one. Different strokes from different folks, they say now, and that's cool. So if I say summer to you, you get one set of private personal images that are all way different from mine. That's cool. But for me, summer is always going to be mean running down the road to Florida Market with change jingling in my pockets, the temperature in the gay 90s, my feet dressed in Keds. The word conjures an image of the GS's and WM's railroad tracks running into a perspective point in the distance, burnished so white under the sun that when you close your eyes, you could still see them in the dark, only blue instead of white. But there was more to that summer than our trip across the river to look for Ray Brower, although that looms the largest. Sounds of Fleetwood singing Come Softly to Me and Robin Luke singing Susie Darling and little Anthony popping the vocal of on I Ran All the Way Home. Were they all hits in the summer of 1960? Yes and no. Mostly yes. In the long purple evenings when rock and roll from Wham blurred into night baseball from Wuko, time shifted. I think it was all 1960, and that summer went on for space of years, held magically intact in a web of sounds. The sweet hum of crickets and machine gun roar a playing crab riffling against the spokes of some kid's bicycle as he pedaled home from late supper of cold cuts and iced tea. The flat Texas voice of Buddy Knox singing, "Come along and be my party doll, and I'll make love to you." And the baseball announcer's voice mingled with the song with the smell of fresh cut grass. Counts 3-2 now. Whiteford leans over, shakes off the sign, and now he's got it. 4 pauses, pitches, and 3. It goes. Williams got all of that one. Kiss it goodbye. Red SOX lead 3-1 was Teddy Williams still playing for the Red Sox in 1960? You bet you bet your ass he was. 316 for my man Ted. I remember that very clearly. Baseball had become important to me in the last couple of years ever since I'd had to face the knowledge that baseball players was as much flesh and blood as I was. That knowledge came when Roy Campanella's car overturned and the papers screamed mortal news from the front pages. His career was done. He was going to sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. How that came back to me with the same sickening mortal thud when I sat down to this typewriter one morning 2 years ago, turned on the radio, and heard that Thurman Munson had died while trying to land his airplane. There were movies to go see at the Gem, which had long since been torn down. Science fiction movies like Gog with Richard Egan and westerns like Audie Murphy. Teddy saw every movie Audie Murphy made at least 3 times. He believed Murphy was also a god. And war movies like John Wayne. There were games and endless bolted meals, lawns to mow, places to run to, walls to pitch pennies against, people to clap you on the back, and now I sit here trying to look through an IBM keyboard and see that time trying to recall the best and worst of that green and brown summer, and I can almost feel the skinny scabbed boy still buried in this advancing body and hearing those sounds. But the apotheosis of the memory and time is Gordy LaChance running down the road to the Florida market with change in his pockets and sweating down his back. I asked for 3 pounds of hamburger and got some hamburger rolls, 4 bottles of Coke, and 2-cent church key to open them with. The owner, a man named George Dussett, got the meat and then learned by his cash register, one hammy hand planted on the counter by the big bottle of hard cooked eggs, a toothpick in his mouth, his huge beer belly rounding, his white tea like sailed filled with good wind. He stood right there as I shopped, making sure I didn't try to hawk anything. He didn't say a word until he was weighed up the hamburger. I know you. You're Denny LaChance's brother, ain't you? The toothpick journeyed from one corner of his mouth to the other, as if on ball bearings. Okay, that's satisfying. He reached behind the cash register, picked up a bottle of of SOK cream soda and chugged it. Yes, sir, but Denny, yeah, I know. That's a sad thing, kid. The Bible says in midst of life we are in death. Did you know that? Yeah. I lost my brother in Korea. You look like Denny. People ever tell you that? Yeah. Spitting image. Yes, sir, sometimes, I said gloomily. I remember the year he was I remember the year he was all conference. Halfback he played. Yeah? Could he run? Father God and Sonny Jesus, you're probably too young to remember. He was looking over my head, over through the screen door, and into the blasting heat, as if he had a beautiful vision of my brother. I remember, Mr. Dussett. What, kid? His eyes were still misty with memory. The toothpick trembled a little between his lips. Your thumb is on that scales. What? He looked down, astounded, to where the ball of his thumb was pressed firmly on the white enamel. If I hadn't moved away from him a little bit when he started talking like Dennis, the ground meat would have hidden it. Why, so it is. Yeah, I guess I just got thinking about your brother. God love him. George Dussett signed a cross on himself. When he took his thumb off the scales, the needle sprang back 6 ounces. He patted a little more meat on top and then did the packaged up with white butcher's paper. Okay, he said, pass the toothpick. Let's see what we got here. 3 pounds of hamburger, that's $1.44. Hamburger rolls, that's 27. 4 sodas, 40 cents. One church key, 2 pence. Comes to, he added up the bag when he was going to put stuff in. 22:09:30, I said. He looked up at me, slowly frowning. Huh? 2:13? You added it wrong. Kid, you added it wrong, I said. First you put your thumb on the scales, and then you overcharged on the groceries, Mr. Dussett. I was gonna throw some Hosties Twinkies on top of that order, but now I guess I won't. I spanged $2.13 down on the Schlitz placement in front of him. He looked at the memory, then me. He looked at the money, then me. The frown was now tremendous. The lines on his face were as deep as fissures. Fissures? As fissures? No, fissures. What are you, kid? He said in a low voice that was ominously confidential. Are you some kind of smartass? No, sir, I said. But you ain't gonna jap me and get away with it. What would your mother say if she knew you were japping little kids? He trusted he well he thrust our stuff into the paper bag with quick, stiff movements, making the Coke bottles clink together. He thrust the bag at me roughly, not caring if I dropped it and broke the sodas or not. His swarthy face was flushed and dull, and the frown now froze in place. Okay, kid, here you go. Now what you do is you get the Christ out of my store. I see you in here again, and I'm going to throw you out. Yes, smart ass little son of a. I won't come in again. Um. So did Gordy? So did the guy actually like do the math wrong, or is Gordy like tricking him because he doesn't have enough money himself? I don't get it. Anyway, um, I won't come in again, I said, walking over to the screen door and pushing it open. The hot afternoon buzzed somnolently along its appointed course outside, sounding green and brown and full of silent light. Neither will none of my friends. I guess I got 50 or so. Oh my god. All right, you know what? I'm actually not. I have how many pages left? One, two, three, four, 5 pages left. Y'all, you know what? I think we're gonna have to stop like midway in the chapter. I'm not gonna lie to you. We're gonna stop on page 64. I started on chapter what? Chapter 11? Yeah. Alrighty, y'all. That's it. That's all that I have. I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.